Welcome, everyone. My name is Patlee. I am the lead facilitator and community host of Reyou Mindfulness Collective. Reyou is a community-centered learning and practice hub that supportively brings together professionals, caregivers, and people experiencing major transitions. So we can help them to help themselves improve their mental well-being and transform conflicts. Our mission at Reyou is to nurture well-being through meaningful connections and the use of accessible tools such as mindfulness-based stress reduction, narrative therapy, journaling, and lived experience storytelling practices. And we also bring to the community and to the wider world at large, Mindful Lunch, which is our free monthly lunchtime speaker event where we share some tools and wisdom and experiences that help to nurture well-being, learning, and practice, and also bring that conversation into spaces where they need to be brought to. So we call this Mindful Lunch for a reason. As I mentioned, if you're eating, please feel free to continue doing so. This is about nourishing the mind as well as nourishing the body. So if this is your lunchtime, do go ahead and eat. Cameras on or off are welcome. But I do have to say that the real reason why we call this Mindful Lunch is because this is an invitation really to find ourselves in an awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose and without judgment. And there's a lot to unpack with this definition of mindfulness that I just use here, the awareness that comes from paying attention on purpose and without judgment. But the invitation is to simply open ourselves to the curiosity of the moment and to be willing to engage with what we might discover from this new interaction with the theme or the topic that we've invited you into connecting with us on here in this Mindful Lunch session. Pleased to introduce my guest here for today's Mindful Lunch. Her name is Sharon Inkster. And Sharon is a board certified safety professional. She's a licensed heart math trainer and a former police officer. And she's also the owner of Practical Safety, Health, and Environmental Solutions. Now, before I get into bringing Sharon to the floor, I just want to help to set the context for why this conversation of managing anxiety at work is sort of being raised as one of the things that we deal with in the community. And I'll do that really quickly by just sharing a really short story before I turn things over to Sharon. So this is a story that I've shared in other spaces. The persons who are familiar with me might know a little bit about this or have heard this story before. So a few years ago, when I was teaching classes at the University of Manitoba, I experienced the worst panic attack of my life. Now, what had happened was this is a winter time and I'd pulled into the university parkade as usual, after doing my typical morning routine of leaving my house, dropping my kids off at school and daycare, and then, driving across town to come to campus to teach my class. So all of the routine was quite familiar, but this day felt particularly ominous, right? And what I had to do was walk from the parkade into the building next to the parkade, which is where I'd have my class. And my class is on the top floor of the building and you use stairs to get there. And I remember very vividly that as I was going up the steps and I reached the landing, the level where my classroom was, I had gotten to a point where I knew I was in the full grip of the most intense wave of anxiety I'd ever had in my life. I was very convinced that if I took one more step towards my classroom, my heart would just burst wide open and I would die. So I think the only thing that I could do in the moment, which was to duck into one of the empty classrooms next to where I felt like I was frozen. And I locked the door and I bawled. I mean, I wept. I just crumpled up on the floor, shaking, sweating, feeling like I was about to pass out. And at some point, I was able to call my husband, who talked with me on the phone for a really long time. He was able to get me to calm down. And then after a while, I was able to pull myself together. And then I went to teach my class. But the funny thing is, I never missed a step with teaching the lesson that day, right? But I felt so exhausted. I felt so worn down. And I had this really heavy feeling that this was the beginning of the end, right? Now, I know that anxiety doesn't show up in the same way for everyone, but when we think about anxiety, which is this general term that's used to describe intense feelings of overwhelm and unease that tend to manifest themselves as physical and emotional reaction, you know, anxiety is something that doesn't present itself in the same way for everyone. And if I'm to be quite honest, this particular instant actually came after months of ignoring the less impactful instances, you know, the ones that didn't stop me in my track and caused me to feel like I could not go on. And those are typically things like, you know, the edginess, the racing heartbeat, the sweaty palms, the headaches, and so on. So I just wanted to, you know, before we bring Sharon and her work into the conversation, I just wanted to sort of find out from everyone here, like, and assuming that we're working from the point of view that we've all experienced some kind of intense feeling of unease or overwhelm at some point in time. I'm just going to put it in the chat here, a little question that I have, and you can respond in the chat if this feels comfortable for you. How anxiety tends to show up in different ways for us. So we've got that trouble experiencing clarity of thought, yeah, a racing mind, not feeling very hopeful about action, yep, waking up in the middle of the night, for sure, not being able to focus, trouble breathing, yeah, yeah. So yeah, so I encourage you to keep putting those in the chat. Feeling emotionally reactive, restlessness and anger. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Panic attacks. Oh yes, and feeling very scared that you might not be able to survive the next one. Absolutely. So yeah, please feel free to keep putting those into the chat. And we can continue to nurture those conversations as we go along. So I'm gonna turn things over to our guest speaker today. So Sharon Sharon works in a different a similar but different realm than myself. So whereas I work within the remit of mindfulness-based stress reduction practices, journaling practices, and other narrative therapy tools that help people restore mental resilience, and deal with those feelings of emotional overwhelm and anxiety. I know that both our work, MBSR and narrative practice work, as well as heart math and the specific training work that you do, Sharon, are both based on a wealth of research and evidence that tells us about how neurochemical reactions, neuroconnectivity, and cognitive reframing happens. But your work focuses more on the neurocardiology aspect of things. That is the brain health and the way that the heart helps to direct the neurochemical reactions and the neuroconnectivity and cognitive reframing. So Sharon, I'm gonna give you a really big welcome, and I'm gonna give the floor over to you to ask you to tell us a little bit about all of that.
Okay, well, thank you, Patlee. I'm so honored to be here, and I really appreciate the invite. And it's so lovely to see many of the familiar faces in the room, and to meet new ones. Wow, your story and all the stories in the chat really resonate with me. I also suffered, massive bouts of anxiety in many of the areas that I've worked in that hold those ethical responsibilities, and And, you know, for me, really, my brain just goes offline. And so I've always been curious as to why that is. And the first time, like I've been through burnout a couple of times, twice. And I always thought I was extremely good at managing my health. You know, like I ate right, I exercised, I made sure I got enough sleep, but there was just something missing. And it really was my ability to manage that connection between the heart and the brain, and what was happening with my emotions, and how my emotions were really taking control over my autonomic nervous system, ramping up tons of energy expenditure that I couldn't afford to lose when you're working in those, when you're working anywhere, really. Even just being a parent, you wake up with, you know, a certain amount of energy every day, and you need every, you know, kilojoule of that energy in order to function healthily or with health. So, so yeah, I mean, I got into this because I was extremely fascinated by behavior, what I was seeing as a police officer, what I later seen in you know, the corporate world in health and safety, and I worked in mining, what I was seeing in cultural environments. And it comes down to something that's really exciting, and it's the fact that we've got a lot more power over our physiology, which is all of our body's functions and our health, than we think we do. And it's that heart, which I found through extensive research, is the major player in that game. And it's really fascinating, and it fills me with hope, because we can all speak the language of the heart. That's what every human can connect with. And the beauty is it doesn't have to be connection through words. And we're going to take a look at what's going on to that. So because I tend to get lost in the weeds with science and I get really geeky, I'm going to share a video of Dr. Roland McCready, who's the Director of Research at the HeartMath Institute, to really succinctly explain what's going on with the heart. So I'm going to share my screen. And if everyone can just give me a thumbs up. If they can see a video clip coming their way. Or maybe just a verbal yes, because I, for some reason, have lost everyone's.
Yeah, we can see it. I think.
Okay, so here it is. I will stop speaking.
The HeartMath tools and techniques really help you access the intelligence of the heart so we can make better choices in the moment and really navigate these stressful times. What we hear from people across the world, across all professions, is that stress, anxiety, and overwhelm are really out of hand. And a lot of this is due to so much change that's happening. And the way our brains work, we don't like change. Humans do not like change, especially unexpected change or change that we're not in control of. And as it turns out, one of the most effective ways to really reduce stress and anxiety, and even feelings of overwhelm, is to learn how to access the intelligence of the heart and shift the rhythms of the heart, which sends a different neural message to the brain. So one aspect of our research is really focused on developing simple, practical, user-friendly tools and techniques that allow people to really manage their stress. So a lot of people, probably even today, if you think about it, have had a situation where you were being told to do something or you wanted something, but there was a deeper sense or a deeper feeling that it's probably not the best choice. So that's what I mean by that lack of alignment. And that can really be a huge source of stress for people until they learn how to really get the alignment between the heart and brain, which is where coherence comes in. That's when the heart, mind, and emotions are aligned and working together harmoniously. Our basic research done here at the HeartMath Research Center focused more on the physiology of how the heart and brain communicate. Interestingly, a lot of people are surprised to learn that the heart sends more information through the nervous system to the brain than the other way around. And that sounds like some new discovery, but it's not. This has actually been known since the late 1800s. It's basic physiology. But this is important because the quality of these signals sent from the heart to the brain have profound effects on brain function, our mental clarity, even our emotional experience. So the brain is largely interpreting the signals from the heart to create how we feel. So this is why we focus on the heart so much, because if you can shift the rhythms of the heart, you can quickly improve brain function, reduce feelings of anxiety, stress, overwhelm, and so on. But it takes a different doorway, the heart. So the HeartMath tools and techniques are really designed to shift the rhythms of the heart, which changes the ascending information from the heart to the brain, which is absolutely necessary in order to establish a new baseline. And without establishing a new baseline, we really can't, it's impossible to have sustained change or improvements in our health and our emotional experience. So when we get our systems coherent and have the alignment between heart and brain, that's really when we access that deeper intuition that we have within, and inner guidance. So we have a new sense of clarity in a lot of decisions that can seem complex otherwise.
Okay, so can anyone relate to when Roland said in the video of having a moment where their heart's telling them one thing and their mind is telling them another? Just quick show of hands and a nod. So pretty much everyone in the room. And boy, didn't that just feel a bit like overwhelm, anxiety, stress, right? Well, the beauty of those techniques that Roland was talking about is it's almost works instantly. Because of the connection that the heart has with the brain, it's actually synchronized to parts of the brain that are responsible for our emotional processing and our perception of the world. And so the perception is such a key element to, how we show up as human beings because of our experience in life and how we tend to wire in experiences, and then they become emotional biases or cognitive biases for us, which we bounce things off of as we go through our day, and which is why some things in our environments trigger us and some things don't. Sometimes if we've got a lot of energy, we're feeling really good today, stuff that normally, kind of tends to irritate us just bounces off our shoulders and we don't even think of it. And so when it comes to resilience and the amount of energy that we have, our emotions are, playing a ton of energy on or using up a lot of our energy. And so it's those slow energy drains that can add up and accumulate and those big events can make a big difference in our lives and be encoded as an experience. But those small energy drains are also what's holding us back from really experiencing true health. And so I just want to expand a little bit by sharing some slides on the powerful rhythms, and it really is the rhythm and the pattern that the heart is beating that's informing our brain function. And it's that point in time where we've got a stimulus and a response, that we've got a space in which we can choose on how either responding to a situation or reacting. And it's really our perception of that situation that's playing on our senses. And because it could be something that a piece of our brain called the amygdala is looking through its files and constantly scanning the environment for threat, familiarity, comfort, and safety. And so if that input or that environmental trigger matches something in the amygdala, it elicits that emotional response. But we can control that with the heart and the heart rhythm, because the core cells of that amygdala are synchronized with each and every heartbeat. And so that's what's going on. That's why our brains go offline when we're experiencing stress. Our body tends to shut down. We ramp up energy expenditure. And so I'm going to stop my share there and get to some notes. I apologize for being a little... All my Zoom changed this morning. So, so again, that heart brain, it's much more than just a pump for circulating our blood. The heart actually has 40,000 neurons. It's an information processing center. So when we're using our heart really encompasses the wholeness of a situation. And so not just the logic piece that our brain loves to chew on, but it's also the, how is this decision going to affect others? What am I reading from this other person that my brain's not picking up on, but my heart certainly is, because that's its job. It really likes to process emotional information. Our heart actually feels, senses, learns, and remembers things. And those things are largely patterns. And the patterns get ingrained as emotional coding for us. And so if we have the ability and the knowledge to break those patterns, we're able to live from a new behavioral pattern and new perspectives on life. So just to expand a little bit more, there's 4 pathways of communication that the heart uses to communicate with the body. And so we have neurological nerve impulses, biochemical, which is hormones and transmitters. The heart is actually part of an endocrine system. It emits something called atrial peptide, which is key to reducing a stress response. And it even will emit oxytocin, which is what's called the cuddle hormone. It also communicates biophysically with pulse waves, and the big one, electromagnetically. The heart is the largest source of electrical magnetic activity in the body. And what's really cool is the heart actually will act completely independently from the brain and the head. And so it's fascinating, but what's really cool is that we leave a ton of this intelligence on the table when we go throughout our days, just simply because we don't know about it. Advances in research and science have gotten us to a place where we can now communicate this knowledge and see how we can change the world with it. So now what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about
Point that was made in the slide about coherence. So whenever I hear the word coherence, I think about a lot about the work that I tend to do within the Reyou community, where we try to achieve that sense of resilience and coherence through the work that we're doing, but it's far less about encouraging people to sit in eyes closed meditation and doing breath work. That's certainly not the way that I find useful in terms of coming into that sense of coherence. And it's really more about cultivating positive emotions and doing mindful actions and engaging with meaningful interpersonal connections. So I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more about that, bit about coherence that was highlighted in the slide with respect to the HeartMath research, and what role human connections and positive emotions actually play in building that stress resiliency.
Absolutely. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll get into sharing my slides again. Okay. Can everybody just give me a thumbs up if they see slides on the screen? Awesome. All right, I will expand them. So coherence. And we've heard Roland talk about coherence being the optimal state in which the heart, mind, and emotions is aligned and in sync. And so what's happening on the physiological scale is the immune, hormonal, and nervous systems are all functioning in a state of energetic coordination. And this is really important because emotions, the emotions that we feel and experience throughout the day, are the primary drivers of our physiology. And what makes them so powerful is that our physiology directly affects our perceptions of what we see. And so there's a process happening. There's not really a chicken and an egg going on here, but a process of us interacting with our environments and our body and our cells all interacting together that's creating this state of coherence. And so if we can show up, like Patlee said, in coherence on purpose, we're able to affect the environment with our coherence, which makes it neat. When it comes to a team sort of coherence, so a team coherence is when a group achieves that harmonious and stable relationship. Now you can imagine in your family, if you could intentionally bring coherence to your family get-togethers, to your work environments, how energetically efficient that would feel, and how you would end up changing the culture slowly over time by each and every decision you make when you show up. If you choose to show up being a coherent human being, you're going to affect that environment, and that coherence will spread socially. And a lot of what's happening, we won't get into it, but our hearts, part of that nervous system, our hearts are constantly communicating with each other. And so you can feel when I'm excited, you can feel that. You can be blind. I could walk in the room completely excited, not say a word, and you would pick up on that. And that's our hearts that are able to communicate with each other. It's absolutely fascinating. And that's also why emotions are, if you've probably heard the term social contagion, and you get that group think. So you've got a group full of happy people tend to perform better. You've got a group full of toxicity, tend to not perform so well and be very draining. So self-regulation, so this is the important part. Our ability to self-regulate or inability is central to the vast majority of health and relational issues that plague teams and social problems in our societies today. So a lot of things come down to our ability to self-regulate. So the most important strength that the majority of people can benefit from is building capacity to be more effectively self-regulate our own emotions, attitudes, and behaviors, no matter the situation. It's about how we're showing up. And again, that's leadership. We show up in our environment. We cannot not influence our environment as much as our environment cannot not influence us. So it takes leadership to break the pattern. So one thing about our connectivity is the social engagement. We're wired to connect with each other. We're going to either living in states of reactivity, so fight, flight, freeze, because of our behavior, how we show up, or we're living in states of giving and receiving. And we have a choice between stimulus and response. It's that choice each and every moment. And then we already covered how the hearts are affecting the brain. And just to talk a little bit briefly about what's going on in the body. So when we experience, depleting emotions, they're not good or bad, but they are depleting or renewing. There's over 14,000 biochemicals changing in the body. They're happening. So when we're experiencing the depleting emotions, we're ramping up energy expenditure. And on the cellular level, we are not renewing. And so what we do when we intentionally introduce coherence to the system is that we don't have to go have a snooze and get some sleep or get 7 hours of sleep to renew. We're actually renewing because we're eliciting the hormones, the right chemical in the recipe to either renew cellular at the cellular level or to ramp up energy expenditure. So renewing emotions, they help the heart get into that coherent rhythm, which communicates to the rest of the body. And one key hormone is called DHEA, and that's called the vitality hormone. So when we experience regenerative emotions, such as care, compassion, or appreciation, we're able to offset that energy drain and intentionally create coherence in the body, which is going to increase our longevity, resilience to adversity, our memory. Our memory starts coming back. Problem-solving abilities, our intuition and creativity ramps up. And so these are all of the things that we really get paid for when it comes to job performance and just performing as a human being.
Put things into perspective, right? We're actually being paid to show up really well in our workplaces and in our real life. Yet there's so much about our workplaces and our real life that is energy depleting. Mm-hmm. And so, I just want to like maybe orient this question to so what can we do? Because one of the things that we want to do with our Mindful Lunch series is give people a tool, like give them something hopeful that they can hold on to say that this is something that I can change in terms of helping me show up better. And I feel like a lot of the practices that we do in MBSR are really very similar to what happens in heart math in a way. But certainly in my work, what I do tend to focus on are things that are more on the narrative therapy and the tuning inward side. Your approach is different, but we're still, looking at what's happening with the individual and the community simultaneously. So Sharon, could you tell us about like maybe the practices or maybe one of the practices that you use in heart math for dealing with stress and anxiety in the moment, and maybe show us an example of it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll walk us through an example if that's good with you. So that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the heart math techniques is they're extremely accessible. They are to be used in the moment you're experiencing stress, anxiety, or overwhelm, to basically turn down the volume of that reaction and get to a place of balanced and calm. So each of the programs I teach usually have about 6 techniques to go through. And there's so many. If you jump onto the Heart Math websites, so many free ones. There's lots on YouTube you can dig into. What I'm going to share with you is one I use all the time, and it's called Quick Coherence Technique. And this technique it's a real powerhouse technique, and it's designed to help you get to a place of coherence, get your heart into that coherent rhythm, and experience a regenerative feeling, and get that DHEA flowing through the bloodstream so that you're able to repair right in the moment and find that centered balance. So if you're all ready, I'm just going to walk you through the technique. You can use this with eyes open or closed. It's great in traffic. If you're in the boardroom, things are going sideways, nobody knows you're doing it. And so they'll just look at you and go, "Why are you so calm? Everyone else is really freaking out here. What's going on with you?" So we'll walk through it. I know we're pretty short on time, so Patlee will just flag me down when we want to quit. But I want to give you a good experience of this. And when we practice together in a group, it really amplifies the effects. So if you're all ready, just give me a nod or a thumbs up. Okay. And you can focus your attention in the area of your heart. And imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. Just find an easy rhythm that's comfortable for you. And now make a sincere attempt to experience a regenerative feeling, such as appreciation or care for someone or something in your life. This could be someone you love, a pet, a special place, or an accomplishment, or even a feeling of calm or ease. If you find your mind wandering, just gently bring it back to the area of your heart. And when you're ready, bring yourself back to the Zoom family room. Did anyone notice a difference? Couple head nods. Is it okay if we ask anyone to share what they experienced?
I know that for me, that felt particularly calming. Just being able to sort of coming back to that presence. Yeah. Oh, we had one comment in the chat, feeling more present, and it helped that their cat was sitting on their lap. After doing that.
Yes. I've had it where my sister's dog will be practicing this together, and my sister's dog will be running around chasing squirrels. She'll come and she'll lay right beside us. It's the weirdest thing, but she loves it. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe that sense of that electromagnetic coherence that you're talking about, that settling and steadying of the space that brings the animals in, right? I've heard oftentimes persons talk about doing MBSR practices and their pets, like even if they're sitting, whatever it is that they're doing, once they get into that state of calm, their pets usually come and sit with them quietly.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just read some of the other comments that are in the chat. And of course, if there's anyone that wants to come forward and speak, like feel free to unmute yourself and come on forward, or just raise a digital hand and we'll let you get some space here. But some of the other comments in the chat was finding it difficult to not think about work and having to bring themselves back. Like, Sharon, is there anything that you might want to offer on that, the having to bring yourself back? Because I noticed that was part of the practice, that reminder to come back, which I really enjoy. What would you say about that?
So that's how we strengthen that mental muscle. It's just like doing a rep in a gym, only we're working with our brain. And when we notice that we've wandered, and when we bring it back to that area of the heart, we start that coherence process again. That's the muscle building. And so it's totally okay if your mind wanders. In fact, it's completely normal, and it's actually a good thing, because that's every time it happens and you catch it, you get a rep in. So you're slowly building up that practice. So one of the things that helps with it is to practice every day, practice throughout the day. So I really recommend, and I'm going to share this technique with Patlee, so you have it. Put it up on the wall in your office. Put it in, take a snapshot on your phone. And you'll be able to practice it, whenever you feel yourself just getting out of balance. But the more you practice, you're building a foundation of resilience. And then it becomes second nature. And so you just automatically will start heart-focused breathing, because that's the first part of the technique. And then you will experience that regenerative feeling. So I do recommend the practice.
The practice is always important, regardless of what it is that we're practicing, right? It's always important to get settled into that practice. I have another comment here that I'll read out. I feel more settled and ready for my 1 o'clock session, where I really need to show up fully.
Good.
That is so beautiful. I like that I thought about someone that I loved. That's a really interesting thing as well. That's something that in a few of the mindfulness practices we're invited into, generating feelings of loving kindness and compassion. One of the things I love about heart math is that we're not trying to force that sense of generating kindness and compassion or I shouldn't say force it, but we're not trying to deliberately cultivate that. We're simply asking ourselves to call to mind, and I love the way that you framed it, an accomplishment or just a loved one. And there's no words or storying around that. It's just, can you find yourself in that feeling, that memory, or that looking forward to of something that will help to cultivate that positive emotion.
Yeah. That's what makes it accessible. I mean, it depends on your experience, but it could be that cat. It could be that place that you love to camp. It could be the lake side, whatever it is for you, whatever lights you up.
Yeah. For me, I was thinking about my daughter. She's home sick from school today. And that's what I thought about. And so I don't know if it's maybe, can you offer something as to if this positive and regenerative feeling, does it always have to be something that we're holding, loftily to say that this was a success, or could it be something that really gets us to connect with that feeling of comfort and kindness within ourselves?
That's exactly it. It is that feeling that you get when you're experiencing the regenerative emotions. For me, sometimes I just look and I see the colors changing in the leaves and I think, what a gift. You know, the season is changing. Yes, the summer warm temperatures are going away, but what a gift fall is.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the more you really connect with that feeling. And it is about that sincere attempt to experience the feeling. And it will take time. And it will take, like, I was a person who was very numb. I was emotionally cut off. And so I'm like, I don't feel it. Sorry. But there's ways that we can get there. And just by dedication and practice, you get there. And now for me, I mean, people tell me that they've never met a more positive, happy person. And so I'm like, wow, what a road to recovery that's been, because before I couldn't connect to it. So
I know, right? I always describe you as the calmest person I know, and you always laugh when I say that, but you are indeed the most calm person I know. Which is really interesting because one of the comments that we have here is that, you know, from one person, it's hard to do the exercise because of the squirrel brain, you know, and a lot of us start with that squirrel brain, but, it would be nice to sort of like what's your input in terms of being able to move out of that squirrel or monkey mind mindset, and how we'll eventually get there to that calmness and that coherence and that control of, that, or I should say, that self-regulation.
yeah, well, the biggest piece again is the practice. It really, because what's happening physiologically is we're rewiring our neurological baseline to a healthier baseline. So that squirrel brain is actually a setting we've gotten ourselves into because of the pace of life and how information flows at us, and we just can't manage it all. We have, competing priorities all the time. We are not smartphones. We're not designed to be smartphones. We can't keep up with smartphones. But the pace and expectations of society and work, which I do believe is changing because we're wearing each other out, is just not conducive to that calm, clear mind and a peaceful, loving heart. And so, again, it's by practice. It's by showing up every day saying, I'm intentionally going to show up as coherent as I possibly can. So start out 2 to 5 minutes in the morning. If you can, get a 20-minute practice in and just keep coming back to that area of the heart and keep experiencing those regenerative feelings. And you'll see, because you are rewiring your brain and your physiology to create that sustained behavioral change, you'll see that the opportunities are just plentiful to practice, both good and bad.
Sharon, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I really appreciate you being able to take the time to be with us. And thank you so much to everyone who was able to turn out and could stick with us. I know a number of people are heading out to their 1 p.m.s, and so we always promise that we try to end these by 1. But the learning, the questions, the answers to questions, and the sharing of ideas continue inside the Reyou community. Just a reminder to everyone that Reyou is free to join, and we have other free events like lunch that are available to community members, including the You Not Your Anxiety challenge, which is our monthly challenge for this month of September, where we're asking persons to do a little bit of mindfulness practices and a little bit of journaling about who is showing up on a daily basis or a weekly basis, or for particular occasions. Who is showing up? Is it you or your anxiety? And again, like Sharon said, you'll only know if you ask yourselves those questions and if you actually engage in a practice that helps to change things and to turn things around. What a wonderful lunch. Yeah. Sharon, thank you so much for being with us, for sharing some of your wisdom and for sharing that practice. I really hope that everyone feels physically and mentally nourished by this mindful lunch session, and the tools that Sharon has shared with us today. We will send those out to you in a follow-up email. And I hope that you'll join me in October for our next mindful lunch session, where we're actually going to share tools and insights for finding your story of resilience. Hey, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. Walk good. Bye.